My wife Sarah and I were together for 11 years, married for 7. We met in college, had what I thought was a solid relationship, and built a life together in Portland. I'm in tech, started a cybersecurity consulting business 5 years ago that finally took off last year. Sarah was a pharmaceutical sales rep who quit when my business started doing well enough to support us both comfortably. The first sign something was off was when Sarah started going to the gym religiously about 8 months ago. At first, I was supportive. Who doesn't want their partner to be healthy? But when she began coming home late, sometimes smelling like alcohol instead of sweat, the old alarm bells started ringing. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I checked her phone while she was in the shower. There they were, hundreds of texts between her and Mike, who, after some Google stalking, turned out to be her college boyfriend before me. The messages left nothing to the imagination. They'd been hooking up for months, and worse, she'd been telling him how she was just waiting for the right moment to cash out of our marriage now that my business was successful. I confronted her that night. She didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she laughed and said, "Well, saves me the trouble of telling you. I want a divorce, and I want half of everything, especially that business you built while I supported you." Those words cut deeper than the cheating. I'd worked 80-hour weeks for years, building my business from nothing while she enjoyed a comfortable life. She'd even convinced me to put our house solely in her name 2 years ago, claiming it was for tax purposes since my business was still operating at a loss then. I stayed at a hotel that night, unable to process what was happening. The next morning, my lawyer friend Tom gave me the bad news. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, and Sarah would likely get half of everything, including my business valuation. He estimated I'd be paying her around $900,000, plus possibly alimony. That's when a plan started forming. In my line of work, I understand digital footprints better than most. I know how people can be tracked, and more importantly, how they can disappear. I had about 2 weeks before she would file the divorce papers. She made that clear in her final mocking text. For those 2 weeks, I acted normal. I went to work, came home to our now separate bedrooms, and pretended to be devastated but accepting of the divorce. Meanwhile, I was methodically preparing for something Sarah never saw coming. I grew up with nothing. Everything I'd built, I'd scraped and fought for. And I wasn't about to hand half of it to someone who betrayed me and treated our vows like a long-term investment scheme. The preparation phase was meticulously executed. I quietly opened a new bank account at a small credit union under my LLC rather than my personal name. Over the course of 10 days, I transferred small amounts, never enough to trigger any alerts, totaling about 60% of our liquid assets. For anyone checking the statements, it would look like regular business expenses. Next, I contacted 3 of my biggest clients and arranged for their next payments to go to this new account. Since I was the sole proprietor and Sarah had no official role in the business, this was completely legal. I also reached out to a business contact in Singapore who owed me a favor and set up a shell consulting company. Meanwhile, I accidentally left browser tabs open researching divorce attorneys with reputations for aggressive litigation. I wanted Sarah confident that I was preparing for a conventional, if nasty, divorce battle. The most challenging part was converting assets to cryptocurrency without leaving a trail. I purchased small amounts of Bitcoin and Ethereum through various exchanges using different devices and networks. I then transferred these to hardware wallets that I stored in a safety deposit box at a bank Sarah knew nothing about. Throughout this process, I maintained my routine. I even suggested couples therapy, which she mockingly declined, to reinforce the impression that I was processing our separation conventionally. On day 12, I put the final pieces in place. I sold my luxury watch collection through a private dealer for cash, something that had always been my thing that Sarah showed no interest in. I converted most of this to more crypto. I also prepared a bug-out bag with essentials and stored it in a locker at the train station. The most painful part was saying goodbye to friends and family without them knowing it. I invited my parents over for dinner, something we did regularly, knowing it might be my last time seeing them for a long while. I met my best friend for our weekly basketball game. These moments were harder than I'd anticipated. These were the innocent casualties of my plan. On day 13, I executed the final phase. I told Sarah I would be traveling to Seattle for a client meeting and would be gone overnight. In reality, I drove to Seattle, left my car in long-term parking at the airport, paid for 6 months in advance in cash, and took a series of rideshares to a small regional airport in a different state. From there, I flew to Mexico City using my legitimate passport. This would be the last official record of my whereabouts that anyone could trace. In Mexico City, I used the identity documentation I had carefully prepared over the previous year for a worst-case business contingency, something that, in my line of work, wasn't actually that unusual to have. I spent 2 weeks in Mexico City, growing a beard and dyeing my hair while finalizing arrangements for my new life. Then I traveled to Singapore, where my business contact had set up an apartment and office space for the consulting firm I now worked for. On what would have been day 15 back home, my phone received a flurry of texts from Sarah and my closest friends. She had filed the divorce papers and discovered the financial movements. Her messages oscillated between rage, confusion, and finally, panic. It's been 16 months since I disappeared. Through encrypted channels and my one trusted friend Tom, I've been able to monitor the aftermath. The story that unfolded back home was better than anything I could have orchestrated. Initially, Sarah played the concerned wife, filing a missing persons report and making tearful pleas on local news. But her performance crumbled when the police discovered her affair during their investigation. The texts between her and Mike revealed not just the infidelity, but conversations about how she'd been planning to cash in on my business success. Her crocodile tears quickly dried up when she realized she was now a suspect in my disappearance. The police eventually concluded I had likely left voluntarily, especially after Tom anonymously provided them with evidence of Sarah's affair and divorce threats. With no crime proven, the case went cold, though it remains technically open. Sarah's attempt to claim my business assets hit a wall. My legal structure had been impeccable from the start, something she'd never bothered to understand. With me gone and no death certificate, the business entered a legal limbo. My automated systems kept serving basic client needs, but new business dried up. The value she'd hoped to extract evaporated month by month. The house she'd insisted on putting solely in her name became her financial prison. Without my income, she couldn't maintain the mortgage payments on our luxury home. She tried selling it in a panic, but the housing market had taken a downer. She eventually sold at a significant loss. Mike, the ex-boyfriend, disappeared from her life the moment the gravy train derailed. According to Tom, she tried returning to pharmaceutical sales, but her former employer had downsized. Last he heard, she was working as a retail pharmacy assistant, a significant step down from her former lifestyle. As for me, I've built a new life. Singapore became a temporary haven, but I eventually settled in Portugal, where I started a new, smaller consulting business under my new identity. I live modestly in a coastal town, something I'd always dreamed of but Sarah had dismissed as boring. I've made new friends, learned a new language, and even started dating again, carefully. The hardest part remains the collateral damage. I miss my parents terribly. Through an elaborate system of encrypted communications, Tom lets them know occasionally that I'm alive and well. They don't know details, which protects them legally, but they understand I had my reasons. My dad, who built his own business from nothing, seemed to intuitively grasp what happened. Do I regret my choice? Sometimes. The legal system was supposed to protect people like me, but instead, it was poised to reward Sarah's calculated betrayal. I lost my home, my country, and contact with loved ones. But I kept my dignity and the fruits of my labor, and found a freedom I never knew I wanted. I'm not advocating for anyone to do what I did. It's a last resort that comes with permanent sacrifices. But for those wondering, yes, it is possible to start over. There's a certain peace in walking away from a battle rigged against you and building something new elsewhere. Sarah wanted half of everything I owned. Instead, she got all of nothing. If there's a lesson here, perhaps it's this. Be careful what you wish for and whom you betray. Sometimes what appears to be an easy target has been analyzing security vulnerabilities professionally for years.